Welcome back to the Sacred Arts Academy, where we talk about all things from the practical to the sacred. Today, we have a very special guest in regards to healing yourself. His name is Christopher Mack. He has been on the road to recovery for 21 years and now spends his time helping others emerge from the tight grip of addiction. He understands how the mind can trick us by being clever, and through his deep honesty allows others to deeply share their stories and transform their lives. Welcome, Christopher.
Thank you for having me. Jesse, the idea I've been working in the population known as Skid Row in Los Angeles for 21 years. I'm actually, my sobriety date was year 2000, so I'm coming up on 24 years of sobriety and sobriety plus abstinence. So that,
Incredible.
and I think abstinence and sobriety are two different things. So I don't get those things confused.
Can
So
you explain a little bit what the difference are between the two?
abstinence is just that you don't use a certain substance, and sobriety is a soundness and a balanced mind to me. It's when you have a sound mind. So you're no longer going down rabbit holes just because. So and you're more in touch with yourself, more in tune with yourself. So there's a couple of things that go on there. So
Yeah, absolutely. I'd like to get to know your story a little bit deeper. Can you tell us a little bit about your history? What happened 24 years ago that put you on this road to recovery?
well, I got caught in the crack epidemic before it was an epidemic, I guess. So I was always looking for an alternate state. Uh, and drugs would always take you there. I was a try guy. I tried this, I tried that. The only thing I didn't do is I didn't do needles and I didn't do heroin, as a practice. However, in the late 70s, early 80s, I started smoking cocaine that was rocked, crack cocaine. It became crack cocaine. We used to just call it freebase. And so fast forward, from 80s to the year 2000, I had, just being immersed in that culture. The drug culture is a very hard culture. And, it's where life and death is, in the streets is always apparent, but you don't see it because you're too blissed out, right? Or you too, not, I wouldn't even say blissed out. You just, in some other state. Could have been. It wasn't New Jersey. Just some other state of mind. And so in the year 2000, I was, in the year 2000, I was going to get that last rock. I was in Inglewood, and there was this long walk to Hollywood Park Racetrack, which is located on Prairie and Century. And I wanted to get this last rock and then get back over to Manchester, which is, quite some ways. And so I had bought this rock, and the sheriff pulled up on me and they searched me and they didn't find nothing the first time. So I went and I was able to buy the rock. And so I was on my way back over to Manchester. And the same sheriff pulled up on me. And this time I have the rocks tucked in my glove, because I had on a pair of gloves. It was kind of like in April, May. And so when I got to the street called Myrtle, the police pulled up on me and they searched me. And now, mind you, I had been to jail for possession of a controlled substance. I did 2 years in the state penitentiary for having something, not for committing any crime, but they had made the possession of a controlled substance a felony. And I was facing this 5-year state penitentiary when they pulled up on me, because they were going to send me back. They were going to give me an enhancement and probably give me more time. And I had this rock, and then all of a sudden I'm standing there and I said, wow, I'm going to the prison for 5 years. And I don't like being locked up. And so I said, I can't kill myself. And I was wondering, and then right then, another thought floods in. It says, you won't see one day in the state penitentiary. Well, 3 days after being arrested, I was released on my own recognizance. And in September of that year, September the 22nd, the year 2000, I went to court and they said, you can go into rehab. And when I took that opportunity to go in rehab, I haven't looked back. But I remember that night when that voice says, you won't see one day in the state penitentiary. Now, as I began to get sober, through the abstinence with the AA program, as I began to get sober, and the first principle in AA is honesty. Not honesty with people, but honesty with yourself. And as I began to get honest with myself, a lot of things came into view that I had pushed down that I didn't never recognize. But I realized that that same voice had been with me throughout my life. One year when I was 18 years old and I cut my wrist and I was running across the street, and that same voice says, you didn't make yourself, you can't kill yourself. So I drove myself to the hospital, got sewed up. Then I remember when I first got married, that same voice came in and says, you won't always be here. And I said, oh, wow. And so when I look back, and hindsight is always 2020. When I look back, I realized that that same voice had always been there, but I never paid attention to how significant it was to me. It was a voice that was that it, I'm standing there that night with this rock. The police had got the rock, but I'm standing there in this place of complete serenity, complete peace. I went to jail and slept on the floor with this peace. And I realized that through all of the activity that was going on, there was this peace and calm that is not in my natural demeanor, but it was something that I was experiencing. And then when I look back, I said, wow, that voice had always talked to me and told me in certain places, in certain pivotal points in my life, it was there giving me instruction. And when it said you won't see one day in the state penitentiary, I live by that voice now today. Not that it's always talking to me, but that one incident was an experience and an expression of life that I overlooked all the time. Because let's just face it. Sometimes growing up in a single parent home, you can have a lot of wishes that seem to be, don't seem to come true. And so you begin to be more and more depressed and down and down. And so I never knew what up was because I lived so down that once you start to get sober, you start to find out that there's some joy and some enjoyment in this thing.
As you were telling your story, I was getting a little bit choked up because I think we all have opportunities to get lost, and whether it's in drugs and gambling and whatever, vices are out there. And when we choose to listen to our inner knowing, when we choose to accept that there is something greater than us that is protecting us and guiding us, and we start to listen to that, our whole lives can change. And you are a living testament of that. That's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. I am so proud to announce that we are launching another YouTube channel called Third Eye Wide Awake, a podcast about ghosts, cults, and deeper knowledge on spiritual stuff through storytelling.
Yeah, but it also put me on a trajectory that is now a little bit more wholesome and healthy. Uh, I stopped trying to look for what's right and wrong, and I started to say, what's healthy? What is healthy for me? And my well-being most of the time is something that I can lock on to. The peace that I have, that is the place where I'm balanced, I lock on to it. And I don't, and it's like, you don't have to hold it, like like some people say in the ritual. You don't have to hold it in the ritual because it's naturally occurring. It's naturally occurring. I feel peaceful. Naturally occurring. I feel the serenity. One of the most prayed prayers in Alcoholics Anonymous is, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Instead of just saying that, the embodiment of the prayer itself begins to guide and begins to lead. And so, what is this serenity? And I begin to know what it is, how it feels. And so I've been able to learn how to discern when I am not, at peace with myself first. And so then I can immediately correct that, balance back out, and then go on into that peace.
Yeah.
I I found, I was listening to Gabor Mate, and he was talking about the difference between happiness and pleasure. And I'm not seeking pleasure anymore because happiness is a way of life for me. And as I was sitting in meditation one time, I found out that happiness is not an e-ticket to Disneyland. So it's not an external stimuli. It's something that occurs when you are awake, you're refreshed, and you're active in it. And sometimes I can just be sitting here like this right now, and all of a sudden the thought will cross my mind, I'm happy. And I'll look around now, there's nothing happening. I'm not winning the lottery. I don't have this new thing in my life. And I said, wow, I'm happy. And I run with that. I don't know if happiness and contentment are kin to one another. However, I appreciate the idea of knowing that I'm happy.
Mm. Yeah. So a couple of things on that. It sounds like you truly had deep transformation. You changed who you were, and therefore it elevated you into a frequency where being at peace and being in happiness is who you are. And then what I really loved what you said about not looking for the good or bad in things, but looking at for what is healthy. And I think that that really is the epitome of like having sovereignty and knowing who you really are, because that takes away judgment from anything and everything. And it's just a choice at that point. It's nothing is good or bad. It's just, is it for me? And without any judgment, which is a really beautiful way to live your life.
Yeah, and that comes from going inside, journey within. My partner and I, Wanda Webster, we collaborated on a book because of what I found in recovery. There's a dynamics that occurs. Like you said, that higher self comes in, or the higher, something greater than yourself comes in, and it starts to train you and starts to teach you, but it's coming from inside. And you don't have choice until you stop the whispering of of your displeasures about life. That you cannot have that because you're always in conflict. You're always in this judgment, and the judgment usually is against self. There's this harsh judgment that we carry on against ourselves, uh, uh, and so now here it is. Once you start to get rid of that, choice comes in. Choice is always more than one option. But most people think that addiction is substance based, but addiction to me is an obsessive compulsive behavior. And these behaviors are being driven by echoes and ghosts of the past that live inside of you. And until you examine those things without judgment, you are not free.
Mm-hmm.
There's the axiom that the truth shall make you free. How free are you within yourself? Are you just being driven by the past dislikes, the past, judgments that you have against things that occurred to you, that happened to you? And so I the forgiveness that I'm learning to have about life itself, I was telling somebody today, I said, sometimes we are angry with God, so we can never get in touch with him because we're too busy being angry at him and says, wow, man, you should have did this for me. Sometimes life is my responsibility because I've been given this treasure, and which is
Mhm.
life. And to be able to say, okay, I've been given this. And sometimes gratitude and being grateful is the only tool you have to rise above the circumstance and the condition that you find yourself in. And so you have to say, oh, thank you. But thank you with not with a sarcastic or some attitude of being, less than or put down, but with the attitude of saying, wow, this is an opportunity to do whatever this thing is. And you have the opportunity to say that. I can't
Mm.
lie to myself anymore. I can't pretend like it's everybody else's fault. I have to take responsibility somewhere, even if it's just the way I perceive something. Even if it was the worst thing that happened to me, I can't keep carrying it around, you know, handcuffed to my hands and ankle and saying, "You did this to me." No, wait a minute. Hold on. It happened. Let's move on.
Mhm.
And most people would think, oh, that's easy for you to say. No, it's easy for me not to hold on to the past that I can't do nothing about, to let it go and not let it hold me. Because you think you're holding on to something when really it's holding on to you because it's dictating your moves. It's dictating how you feel. It's dictating how you react to life rather than saying, wait a minute, I'm going to take responsibility. Maybe I didn't do the thing, or maybe it was unfair, and maybe it was unjust, maybe it was cruel, but you know what? It happened. And that's the best you can come up with, because you can't go back and you cannot reinvent the moment. But it a lot of times we as people, we don't know what it is that we want. But I can guarantee you people do know more about what they don't want than what they do.
Mhm.
And somebody, it's like this. Look, check this out. I don't want to be hit by a 50-ton truck on a freeway. So guess what? I don't go running across the freeway at any given hour unless a car is broke down and I have to get to the other side. But I just don't randomly go running across the freeway because I know that 50-ton truck might be barreling down and I'm pulverized. And so I don't do that. And so that's something I don't want. I don't want to be pulverized by a 50-ton truck. Now, if that happens in life, oh well. But I don't put myself in the position to be hit by a 50-ton truck. So a lot of times people don't know what they want, but they do know what they don't want.
Yep. It's so true. I really love how eloquently you illustrated that when we come out of victimhood, we really take our power back by taking accountability and stopping that victimhood loop and really taking responsibility for our choices and our part in what has happened, even though it may have been unfair and we may have been truly been victims. Sometimes taking that accountability really does give us our power back and allows us to be in our sovereignty, which is really beautiful.
I, I like I like what you said because you can I tell you a story? My sister just passed
Absolutely.
last September.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And no, don't be sorry. Don't be sorry. This was the greatest opportunity. And you was talking about victimhood. And watch what happened. So my sister passed, and I always used to think that this was the wicked stepsister from Cinderella. I used to think that my sister, man, this woman right here, she did X, Y, and Z. She made me feel, when people shape your internal, observations, you really hold them accountable. And I was sitting there, and I realized that she had passed. It was one day before her birthday, and I was sitting there, and I was thinking, I said, "Wow." I thought about her and me in heaven. And I thought about her, and she says, I'm going to come down and I'm going to do things to you that may not be the best thing and the pleasant things. And because she was my villain. And I said, wow. She said, but don't hold that against me. And then she said, because it's something that you needed done. It's something that you wanted me to do. And right then, she was no longer a villain in my story, and I was no longer a victim. So when you cross out both of them, you equal and you come out free. And I said, wow, when you get rid of the villains in your life, you're no longer a victim. So now you're free. And so it doesn't matter what somebody's done, as long as you're holding them accountable for the villainhood, you're going to be a victim. But if you want to be released from being the victim, you got to say, wait a minute, you're the villain that I needed so that I could do X, Y, and Z. Maybe I needed to grow. Maybe I needed to find out what courage was. Maybe I needed to, feel this fear so that I don't have to be afraid anymore. I don't know. But wherever somebody's holding somebody as the villain, they're gonna always be the victim, you know. So, and
Absolutely. It reminds me of there's a saying on my path that we say called gracias medicina, thank you medicine. And it's about turning all of those villains into teachers. Like what is the lesson here? And what am I learning from this? Right? Anything that happens, good, bad, ugly, gracias medicina is what we say, which is a
mhm,
really beautiful thing. And it is freeing.
mhm, because now you're no longer holding yourself hostage without a negotiation, without a ransom, because long after the incident, if you want to hold yourself hostage, that's okay. But if you want to be free of being that hostage, ask yourself, why do I need to hold on to this?
Mm,
And sometimes, we have to get rid of the things that occupy us. And so we become incident hoarders. So hey, that's
absolutely.
that's a new that's a new phrase. Incident hoarders. We're hoarding the incident within ourselves.
It's
And and,
true.
and
And a
you know
lot
what
of
happens?
us have those incidents on a loop and we're living in the past and we're in that victimhood loop, right? And
Right. And,
yeah.
and, hoarding destroys the place that it is, because there it's no longer getting no breath, no air, no freedom, no nothing. And so the more you hoard, the more you're destroying that structure. Like if you have a lot of stuff in a house, that house starts to decay rapidly because it's not being aired out, it's not being cleaned. So, you know, I refuse to be an incident hoarder.
Yeah.
But so one of the things that I learned in the AA structure is, principles before personality. And when you start to live by principles, your personality no longer can hold you hostage, can no longer take you and put you in that subterranean basement of your mind where you can't get free. So,
Mm, powerful. I'm curious to know, how did you start your journey on energy healing? How did you find it? How were you able to integrate that into your own personal healing?
well, first of all, I can't say, the mind that got me there is not the mind that I have today. Because if you use the same mind that got you somewhere, you really healing? But it's when you let go of the mind that got you there, a new mind or a more expanded version of your mind begin to take hold. And now you're able to let go, uncover, discard some things that are no longer necessary. Because a lot of times we carry a lot around baggage that it is not practical. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't help you. It doesn't heal you. And so when I started being able to let go, I seen the dynamics of recovery take hold and become that process. Because if it was something I had to do with it, let's just say I'd be stuck because I would only be using the things that I had. But I begin to be open, begin to be honest, begin to be willing. Those are some of those principles that you utilize in order to cut yourself off from that mind that keeps on looping, that mind that keeps you in victimhood, that mind that keeps on saying, "Oh, he did it to me." You start to be responsible. You start to be accountable, and those things start to take place within inside of you. Now they become operational. They become things that work on your behalf with your consent and permission, but without being locked into it from your mind. Now they're free to do, they become agents in you. And that's why I call it dynamics of recovery. Principles begin to take hold and lead your life. Because if the same mind that got me there was in use today, I would be the same person that I was when 25 years ago. That was
Mhm.
before my recovery. But since I was able to let go of, clean house, let go of stuff and get it out, my house began to breathe. Now I begin to get uh let's just I would say download, but because that's that spiritual nature from the higher self, where you get these downloads where you say, "Oh wow, I never knew that. I didn't think of that." Oh, aha. It's the aha moment that becomes the agent of change.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. And how do you integrate your energy healing modalities in with the support you give to people that are still addicted?
Well, some my energy healing is I work with the crystals for chakra balancing and stuff. I think I use it more so for myself, and so that it's like my armor when I go out there,
Mm.
because you can't. I, I never think about forcing anybody to change. I encourage and suggest, but that change has to take place with the individual. We do have website called the Dynamics of Recovery, and we have a publication that Wanda and I collaborated on. Wanda Webster is my partner, and it's called A Journey Within. She was big she was a Hollywood writer agent, and she usually liked to use film as the motif for the book. But to answer that question, uh, people have to come to recovery for their own self. But the only thing I could do is be an example. By being peaceful, by being that light, I guess, in the room sometimes, and my interaction with people has to be true, honest, and fair.
Mm.
And that I think is the best way, because if you try to wake up a sleepwalker, it's a very dangerous prospect. If you try to save a drowning man, you have to wait until he drowns. When people come and ask me certain things, I try to give them the best answer at the time. But and by not having judgment against them and what when they want to uh, have that experience in their life.
Yeah,
So
that makes
uh,
sense.
yeah,
Can you tell us a little bit about the book you wrote with Wanda and what inspired it?
the dynamics of recovery. This is the journey within, and it's like a manual. You actually can ask yourself questions. You can actually journal within it. Excuse me.
Ooh.
You can actually journal. And at the top, there are questions to help you journal too. It says, "What event from my childhood is most to, difficult to let go?" That's that journal in there. This book is on sale at Amazon, and that first section talks about trauma. and most of the uh, psychological modalities nowadays are dealing with trauma. So people are saying that that diagnosis is what's going forth right now in our culture is, oh, trauma. And so in the book The Journey Within, that's the first thing. We use the analogy of a wound. If you get wounded on the outside, you know how to treat that, you know how to cover that up and stuff like that. But what about all of those things that have wounded you on the inside? Those things that keep running your life, those wounds. How do you deal with that? And the journey within starts to approach that. The journey within is actually a result of the dynamics of recovery in which I just was able to observe it. I've said, oh, wow, there is a dynamics that occur when you start doing that work. But what it really is about, it's about introspection and reflection as a daily tool so that you can transform your life into your authentic self. If I'm able to look at it with a healthy attitude, then I'm able to do something about it. That's with a healthy attitude. And so that's the book came about because Wanda would go to groups that I would hold downtown. Me and a guy named JJ, we would hold these groups in the afternoon because downtown used to be a very heavily recovery community. And we found out that people are recovering from every, people don't realize that recovery is not just substance based, but people are recovering from all sorts of things. You know, Wanda found her recovery part. It says, I was a people pleaser. And so, I felt this need. That's what Wanda says in the book. We do give some anecdotals in the book that that approaches, recovery not being substance based, but it's being that how we hold ourselves. You
Mm.
know, we so a lot of times the person that's holding you hostage is you. We're holding our own self hostage, I like to say, holding yourself hostage without a ransom, And so, uh, so the way that we started was I saw the dynamics of recovery occurring in my own life. And so, it's out of that transformation that we were able to put it down in print, some of the tools and techniques that we use.
I really do think that when we share our stories, it can offer some inspiration and a glimpse of hope of like, oh, it is possible. Because some people want to change, but they just don't know how, or they haven't been in an environment where they've seen something different. And so sharing your story and putting a book out like that, it can be very a powerful tool.
Uh, yeah, I like the idea that inspiration is one of those spiritual tools. Inspiration is really it goes past that carnal mind that says I can't, oh, I'm just this way. But if somebody says, hey, I've done it, but it wasn't me that did it with the same mind that got me to the place I am. But I had to let go of some things, open up, and then you start to get you start to get inspired not only from others' story, but you start to get inspired from your higher self, from that universal source of intelligence. We forget that the intelligence of the universe is far greater than ourselves, but we have to open ourselves up to that channel. And I believe that. You
Mhm.
have to open yourself up, and you can only open yourself up by transmuting some of that gunky stuff that's inside of you so that more of you is online.
100%. Yes. Which brings me to this question. Do you think that there is a connection between energy blockages within like your own energy centers and addiction? Or what are like some of the discoveries that you have found with your own energy healing?
with my own energy healing, sometimes, you know, you could be so harsh and judgmental that you begin to block any refreshments, and you just, just keep repeating that stale, it's that stale idea. In the book of Alcoholics Anonymous on page 27, it talks about our ideas, our emotion, and our attitudes are the dominating forces. So when you talk about blockages, those are some of the things that block us from receiving any new information on the inside. Our ideas. Oh, my name is Christopher Mack, and this is the kind of person I am. That's an idea. My emotion, man, I really don't. I hate all this stuff that's going on. And then my attitude says, you know what, you can't mess with me because I know what I'm doing and what I'm. So when those things are the dominating forces that guide our life, we had to have a new set to come in and to dominate us. Wait a minute. Oh, like what? Oh, well, what is humbleness? What is it to have humility? Humility rather than humiliation. I always find myself at odds with somebody because I always do these things that are humiliating. So when you start to let go of some of the ideas that didn't work, when you start to uh, find your emotions, may not be accurate at that time, because sometimes people are laughing when they should be crying, or crying when they should be laughing, or you know, uh, and then when you say, I'm the only one that's right around here, that's an attitude. So those things dominate us. And when the book describes it as a spiritual awakening. So when we start to wake up inside of ourselves and find out, wait, look, I don't have to be the grand poobah of everybody's life. I don't have to take care of everybody else. And when you start to have a relationship with yourself that's based upon 5 C's. The 5 C's are commitment, communications, cooperation, consideration, and compromise. And when you start having that type of relationship with yourself, you can have that with others. And I'm talking about a healthy relationship. I'm committed. I'm committed in my well-being. I'm committed to that. I'm committed to me being the best person I could be. And so that's a commitment that I've made to myself. And if it doesn't look like that I'm being kind and considerate to me, then I can't be that to anybody else. And so those 5 C's are very healthy for me. I have one that is 7 C's, but I'll only tell you if you ask me.
I was going to ask, what are the other two?
Consciousness, commitment, communications, cooperation, consideration, compromise, compassion.
Mm.
Those are the 7 C's. So first you have to be aware and awake, aware. And I just say you have to be aware. And sometimes you have to be aware of the hard things. Like, I'm not where I want to be inside of myself. And I can't get that externally. It has to come from me. It has to come from its inside. Question is, do I want to be a better person for myself, to myself? I'm a better person for myself, to myself. And now I can be that to others. I'm no longer judging or condemning myself.
Right.
And you have to be aware of that. That's consciousness.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so consciousness, commitment, communications, cooperation, consideration, compromise lead to compassion. Now I do things that are healthy for myself. I
Mm.
don't want to say right and wrong, because right and wrong becomes a harsh judgment, and you have to pay the price for the judgment.
Uh-huh. Yep.
Yeah. So
Hmm. For somebody that might be listening that is struggling with addiction and wants to make a change, what advice would you give on where to get started?
Be willing to be abstinent from whatever you think is causing you to react to life. You know, whether that be drugs, alcohol, the relationship, but that may not be the easiest thing, but be gentle with yourself regardless. But, become aware of what it is that you want and what it is that you don't want. You may not know what you want, but you certainly know what you don't want. And when you lock into what you don't want, you start to get some freedom in getting what you want, what you truly want. So um, it starts, I think it starts with being honest with yourself. Ask yourself some questions. Can I be better than I am today? Do I want to be? And just use those.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And for somebody that is looking to follow your journey, that wants to maybe work with you or get the book, where can they find you?
The book is on sale at Amazon. In fact, we got two books. We got a companion book. One is a novel, and this is Isabel's Starry Night, and The Magical Quest for Alchemy. Okay, this is a novel. It's about a young lady who's have the coming of age experience. That's another thing we don't have in our culture, the coming of age. A lot of times we've lost that. We've lost that to these what do you call it? And this is the book, The Journey Within. You can get both of these books on Amazon, and when you get them, please leave a review. And the website is the dynamicsofrecovery.com. And if you go on there, you can see the books are on there, and also Wanda Webster, and you can download the first chapter, which is where it's more than a flesh wound, and that's the first chapter. And so we have there's a way to get in touch with us on that website, the Dynamics of Recovery. So they can use that. They can use that to do that.
Awesome. And I will link all of those down below to make it easy for our audience to find you. And I just want to thank you so much for coming on and sharing your wisdom with us. A lot of what you said has resonated, and I think that it's going to resonate with a lot of our listeners.
Okay. Hey, I really enjoyed you. You're one of the most pleasant interviewers I've ever encountered. So,
Thank you.
yes.
I appreciate that. And to our listeners, if you enjoyed this conversation, let us know down below, comment, subscribe, and like.